What if seeking isn't about finding answers, but growing into the silence they leave behind? At some point, the questions fall away, and what's left is the light we've been trying to name. This is Seekers and Finders.
I had some seed of hope that spirituality was a real thing, but I didn't have any connection to it. I didn't grow up with any religion. My mother and the people we grew up around were the kind of like spiritual hippies who beat their children and were alcoholics, if you know what I mean. So it's like some great ideas in there, but then the actuality of it was so hypocritical to me that I just couldn't dive into that perspective. And because of all my trauma and all my difficulties in my early life and all my unhappiness throughout my life, I had created this subconscious conditioning with life or reality where we had this agreement that I didn't realize I had made, which was I can kill myself because there hasn't been an even low to high ratio. Like, if this is baseline, I'd suffered much lows, and then the highs had been like maybe this high. So there was like, this isn't really fair. I don't think that I have to commit to this. One night at home with like a lot of whippets, 2 boxes of whippets to bring to a party I was going to go to that I decided not to go to. And I was just doing them by myself in bed. And then I was like laying in bed and I felt this weird feeling, which one might almost correlate it to the sensation of Kundalini, to be honest, but instead it was coming up my front body. But what it was vomit. So I was like in bed on a whippet and I felt this weird feeling. And then suddenly I sat up and I projectile vomited all over my entire bed. In one moment, I swooped up all my blankets, ran to the bathroom, just crying and the most miserable that I've ever done. And I perceived that like, wow, I could have just almost killed myself. So I thought, I'm not going to almost kill myself on accident and have all the people, you know, experiencing that. If I'm this miserable, I'm just going to kill myself because I felt like I'm brave. I can like, I'm not going to accidentally do that. So I made a plan and I prepared to stab myself in the neck with a very sharp knife. And one day when no one was going to be home, I set it all up and I was like looking myself in the mirror, ready to do it. But then I was like, I wasn't going to do it. And then that voice came into my head again and it said, you have to either kill yourself right now or you can never kill yourself. I can't live like this. So there's nowhere for us to go from here with this, like, I'm going to kill myself on the back burner. So this is it. Either fucking do it and then we'll start over or stop.
So today, we're continuing our big mega fall lineup with my very good friend Crystal Rainbow Mort from Seattle, Washington, who has a great tale to tell of her spiritual journey. She's been all over the place, done a whole lot of things. And Crystal, just before you mentioned a key point, you mentioned waking up. We want to cover that. So give us a little background and how you kind of came onto the spiritual path and give us a little orientation. And then from there, we'll pick out things we want to.
Okay.
Okay, go ahead.
So my roots, my upbringing was very difficult. A lot of trauma and abuse and circumstances which left me feeling very isolated and like I didn't fit in and couldn't fit in and nobody could understand me, which sounds a little bit like woe is me, but when people truly hear the details of my story, it's not facetious. And I will just add to all of that, there was also a grain of optimism within my being, which kept me alive. So Um, all the difficult circumstances that like led me to my teens and then created all the structures of my ways of navigating the system kept me from being able to integrate really well into the system. And so I spent about until my late 20s trying to fake it until I made it with the structures that are in place and never succeeding and finding it very difficult. Not having the tools to do well in school, not having the tools or social demeanor to get by for long periods of time in pretty much any work environment. But also having an odd like mask where people perceived me as very capable and sociable and able to do these things. But for me, it was like this pressure inside would build up. And I just couldn't keep it together for longer than about a year in any kind of environment like that. So eventually, but I kept trying and trying. And eventually, when I was 28, it came to a head. It was like I've put in my best effort. I've done what I thought I needed to do, and I can't be happy like this. And I don't know what else to do. So I decided to leave and go traveling. And I actually had a plan, which was that I saved up some money, like $50,000, and I was going to just travel until it was gone and then kill myself because I just couldn't live like, scraping together, trying to get my next meal, pay my rent, all these things, just working in mundane jobs, dealing with, what felt like fake people and being incredibly depressed. And I had some seed of hope that spirituality was a real thing, but I didn't have any connection to it. I didn't grow up with any religion. My mother and the people we grew up around were the kind of like spiritual hippies who beat their children and were alcoholics, if you know what I mean. So it's like some great ideas in there, but then the actuality of it was so hypocritical to me that I just couldn't dive into that perspective. And that was where I was at when I left. Though when I reflect again, I remember I was even already having mystical experiences that become more clear on my journeys. Like just before I left, I was at a friend's house who lived on kind of a vortex place in Seattle energetically. And I had a very potent dream where it was a prophetic dream, which as I then went on my travels for the next 10, 12 years, pieces of this dream would come true, all these places. And that was pretty amazing. And the dream basically was saying, like, you're about to get started on your real journey now, with all these images. But even up until then, I traveled for a year, and then I ended up moving to Hawaii for about 6 months. And as things go, even though I had this idea, this plan that I could kill myself if things didn't work out, eventually things just kept working out and happening as they do. And because of all my trauma and all my difficulties in my early life and all my unhappiness throughout my life, I had created this subconscious conditioning with life or reality where we had this agreement that I didn't realize I had made, which was I can kill myself because there hasn't been an even low to high ratio. Like if this is baseline, I'd suffered much lows and then the highs had been like maybe this high. So there was like, this isn't really fair. I don't think that I have to commit to this. But I ended up in a beautiful relationship, and me and my partner at the time were traveling Greece on a motorcycle on this like epic adventure. And I just remember like arms out on the back of this motorcycle, driving on this Greek beachfront and thinking, okay, this is it. I'm happy enough. This is like a high that is equivalent to the lows I ever experienced. I won't kill myself. And immediately as I thought this thought, a voice came in to my head which said, okay, well, now you're going to lose all of these external circumstances and you still can't kill yourself. And whether this was like a prophetic voice or this was just a idea which I couldn't let go of, and so then manifested, is ultimately irrelevant. So from that point, the relationship started failing. I became very unhappy again because I was attached to that this circumstances was what was making me happy. So maybe like another 8 months goes by before everything just falls apart and I'm left like completely alone in Santa Barbara with none of my family, no friends from life, nobody that I really knew. Again, in the same circumstance of just working a job where I didn't get along with anyone, and that it was definitely nothing related to my passion, which I didn't even know what my passion was at this point. But as soon as the relationship ended, which was like the worst case scenario, I went into a little bit of bad patterns, which I had had in my past, which is just like some binge drinking, not taking really good care of myself, being a little bit sexually promiscuous, and feeling bad. And so there's these things called whippets, and I've never been really addicted to drugs or much using substances in a really addictive way. And even with alcohol, it wouldn't be like I was a drunk, but periodically I would drink way too much and feel really terrible. But I ended up one night at home with like a lot of whippets, 2 boxes of whippets to bring to a party I was going to go to that I decided not to go to. And I was just doing them by myself in bed. And then I was like laying in bed and I felt this weird feeling, which one might almost correlate it to the sensation of Kundalini, to be honest, but instead it was coming up my front body. But what it was vomit. So I was like in bed on a whippet and I felt this weird feeling. And then suddenly I sat up and I projectile vomited all over my entire bed. In one moment, I swooped up all my blankets, ran to the bathroom, just crying and the most miserable that I've ever done. And I perceived that, like, wow, I could have just almost killed myself. So I thought, I'm not going to almost kill myself on accident and have all the people, you know, experiencing that. If I'm this miserable, I'm just going to kill myself because I felt like I'm brave. I can, like, I'm not going to accidentally do that. So I made a plan and I prepared to stab myself in the neck with a very sharp knife. And one day when no one was going to be home, I set it all up and I was like looking myself in the mirror, ready to do it. But then I was like, I wasn't going to do it. And then that voice came into my head again and it said, you have to either kill yourself right now or you can never kill yourself. I can't live like this. So there's nowhere for us to go from here with this, like, I'm going to kill myself on the back burner. So this is it. Either fucking do it and then we'll start over or stop. So I stopped and then I put together all of this subtle information that I had in my mind, which was I could see the voices in my head that were either like raging at my ex for leaving me or like clinging so much to wanting him back. And I knew this wasn't healthy or helpful to me enjoying this moment. And so I understood something about neuronal pathways, that the more you think the same type of thoughts, the more you tend to think the same type of thoughts. And I just decided I'm going to think the word love in my head every time I try to think about my ex. And I couldn't feel love for him or for anything at that point, but I just had this idea that this would help. And also love, I felt, is a high frequency word, that if I'm thinking a high frequency word, it will resonate in my being and it will change the way that I navigate reality. And then it worked. And so when I started realizing it was working, then I decided love is a better word to think than anything else that I can think. So I started, anytime I was conscious enough of my thoughts, to just revert to thinking love, 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 love. And it became my mantra. And this is before I studied anything about mantras or spirituality in this way. And I mantraed the word love dedicated for 8 months. And at the end of that 8 months, I took a half a hit of LSD and I had my first big energetic experience, which was like a clearing of my sacral energy. And the energy moved from my sacral up to my manipura, to my navel. And I had this experience with the people around me that was really connected to like taking back my power and to like being stable in my own sense of truth. And then about a week later, I took an entire hit of LSD and I mantraed love the whole night. And then the next morning, I sat down to meditate, and suddenly all of this energy started moving. Like the energy in my navel moved up to my solar plexus and started like emanating out like the sense of relief. And I just downloaded forgiveness for my mother and forgiveness for all of those hardships from my early life. And everything since then, which had been piling up on my inner being, just like lifted off me. It literally was weights lifting off of myself, and this sense emanating from my solar plexus of relief that lasted about 2 weeks of feeling just intense, like, like when you're really scared something is true or something is going to happen, and then it's not true or it doesn't happen, and just, and you feel relief. Imagine that for 2 whole weeks, unstoppable. It was amazing. And I kept with my dedication to the mantra, and I mean, I called my mom. It was a really beautiful experience. And then about 2 weeks after that, I took 2 hits of LSD and I was mantraing the word of love again. And now I'm at a music festival with all my friends from my childhood and my mom and my brothers, like all my family, all the people that I could love. And finally, this energy like moves up to my heart, and I feel unconditional love probably for the first time that I ever felt it. And then the next day after that, it was actually kind of like a letdown because, it had been this like, bloop, 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 ooh, things are going crazy. And then it just felt like a bit depleted, probably because that's a lot of LSD, 2 hits. And so I was still trying to mantra the word love. I was finding it a little less easeful to do it. And then a few days went by, and so at this time I'm visiting home. I've been living away for, I don't know, like 3 years at this point, 3 or 4 years. And I hadn't been home one time since this. So I'm at home, I'm visiting a friend, and I think this is about 2015. And I'm just like listening to him share from his heart with pure intention. And I was very still. And in the stillness of presence, my head opened up and the energy of the sun came down and created like this circle around me. This was all energetic. I wasn't seeing anything, but this is what it felt like. And then all of this information started coming in, and everything was like speeding up very fast. But my brother had actually had a debilitating spiritual awakening many years before from mushrooms, where he went like crazy and had to be put in a mental institution. So when this was all happening, I kind of knew, I had some idea what was going on. And I just told the information as it got faster and I could feel myself like gonna go. I just said, I don't want all the information right now. Internally, I said this to myself. I just want to know what I need to know. And then the energy slowed down. But then it was just bliss. And literally, I was in a blissed out samadhi for about 6 months where I just understood how reality worked. And my new mantra that just came spontaneously was telling me to stop thinking any thoughts. It was just all thoughts are thoughts. Even love is a thought, and this is not it. So I was like trying to not think any thoughts, but one, I didn't have any practices. I didn't have any guides or clue what to do here. And for the first time in my life, my natural thoughts that wanted to be thinking were like really enjoyable. Up until this, all the thoughts were misery thoughts. And so it was, I'm sure that we all know, like thinking can be such a distraction, an addiction, especially if it's an enjoyable thought. So I was just like driving around, instead of driving around in the stillness that was now available to me. Never in my life had I been able to be still, to have stillness and know what that was. And I knew that was the key for what was happening, but I just didn't trust it. And so I would tell myself that, I would know that, and then I'd just get distracted thinking about all the ways I'm going to make the world a better place now that I know something. I think I'm enlightened. Am I enlightened? I don't know. Who can I ask? So that was pretty much the beginning of my seeking, because before that I was just trying not to die. So I guess what I want to preface everything that I'll share next is that all of our traumas are rooted in basically generational trauma. All of these traumas which I suffered and experienced were committed by people with those exact same traumas. And this is what I recognized through my awakening process. So the biggest components for me that created my struggles, I had a physically abusive mother, verbally and physically very abusive. And that was very hard for me, being empathetic. And she was just very emotionally unstable. If she was going to come home, she would just come home and be a psycho, literally like physically harming us and creating chaos. And I had two brothers. One was 2 years younger than me, and one is 6 years younger than me. The one 2 years younger than me, we both have the same father. And then when I was 5, another 2 men came into our household. One of them ended up molesting me and becoming my child molester for 5 years. The other one ended up becoming my stepdad and the father of my youngest brother. So that was all very difficult and created a lot of isolation. My father leaving when I'm a little less than 2 created all the abandonment things which will come to a young woman, and then no stable maternal figure. And then even my stepfather, who is an incredible man for caring for us, and even when he and my mom separated when I was 10, he kept all 3 of us part-time, and eventually at 13 I moved in with him full-time, and then eventually my brothers, who were part-time until I was about 16 or 17. When he finally got together with another woman, we all 3 lived with him until we were out of the house at that point. So, but he wasn't really connected with me deeply. I had already formed such a deep love bond with my actual father, who then was very infrequently in our lives and not a good figure either. So I don't know if that creates the right type of visualization, but I felt alone and miserable. And then also the way that our parents imprint upon us, all those things I hated my mother for, were within my own psyche. And I was either disassociating from them and hating them, which means I'm hating myself, which is not, you can't heal and grow when you disassociate any parts of yourself. So I had to come through all of this creation of my sense of self that was all about disassociating from all these negatives or bad or evil components, to accepting and loving those, even if they're not played out in the external world through me. Those strains of consciousness all reside in my being, and I can it was that downloading of forgiveness that just gave me an incredible compassion for all beings, no matter what they have done. Even though I haven't done every single wrong thing, I've done all the wrong things that I've done, and I can feel somatically the energy of pain. Let's say it. And I mean, like every crime I've committed against myself or others, I feel that in my body, and I can see how anytime anyone, and these really atrocious things, you're not committing anything against anyone but yourself ultimately. So it just, with that revelation, and it was a somatic revelation, which means I felt it in my body, the understanding of all of these things, rather than as concepts in the head. That gave me the base for the work that I do now. Um, and when I had my awakening and all of that information was coming in, it was telling me about karmic chains, and that I'm a karmic chain breaker. So all these ways that molestation had been passed down, like the person who molested me had been raped as a child in foster care, and that dude, I'm sure, had some abuse as well. And ultimately, all the roots are colonialism. Like all of the problems that I can think of, ultimately, when we follow it back, it's from our separation from our place in the world, our natural connection to life. And it seems that that connection was cut through colonialism to me. And so I didn't know that this was where my path was taking me. So from that point of having that divine revelation, and then slowly acting out my patterns, which caused energetic disruptions and caused me to, like, eventually after 6 months be out of that somatic state and into, again, feeling confused and lost, sent me seeking. I was still traveling. I worked with some ayahuasca. Every time I worked with any medicine, all it did is sent me back to bliss. And I didn't have any tools though. But it was just like, why do you get so confused? Life is just beautiful, and look, it's just easy. And so I go, okay, okay, okay. But again, I didn't have tools. So I started meditating. And also, one of the things which had cleared, which kept reclogging up, was up until my life, this was probably the reason I wanted to commit suicide. There was this small, scary Pandora's box within my being that I would perceive when I would take mushrooms or something in my early 20s. I really didn't like to take psychedelics because it felt like there was this Pandora's box in my being that I, like, wanted to open, but I, like, couldn't bring myself to open it because I was afraid that what was inside was the proof that I'm evil. And so, like, that was a really hard trip to be on. And eventually that was what the forgiveness showed me. When I forgave my mom and everything else uplifted, what I saw was my molestation, and that I had, like, enjoyed being molested. It's more nuanced than that, but that was the scary thing that made me evil. And as soon as I saw that, obviously I could laugh and hold myself with so much kindness, because even if that was true, that I was physically enjoying that experience as a precognitive child, that's a physical sensation thing. And then as conditioning made itself clear, as I began to understand that this was something wrong, then it brought all this shame upon me, like, I'm doing something wrong. And then that was this blacked out. It was completely blacked out in my subconscious. And that made me not trust myself, because I was like, and ultimately that even unraveled more. And then that was like a coping mechanism to deal with the situation which was happening, which actually didn't feel safe and that I wasn't enjoying. And also, because I'm so empathetic, I was receiving, like, sympathetic pleasure from his pleasure of abusing me as well. So all of these were very, like, unraveled through time, and the deeper in touch I've gotten with myself, the more clarity has come through each piece, and each has just given me more compassion for others, because I've had to navigate the whole experience of life through this being of all of these traumas, and it's been hard. And every one of us has all of these traumas. So I know that we're all living through a lot of hardship, and I'm grateful for every one of us that's able to meet that within themselves and not like reproduce it against others. But I also have compassion for those who aren't able to meet that because it's dark, scary stuff. And I don't know why I am capable of it, but I don't expect it of every person.
But do you see
Uh,
that the concept of you thinking that it's evil rather than the natural shadow side of it that everybody has? I mean, the word evil is a very intense mind screw, you know? The visions that you have when you think about what is evil is darker than dark. So isn't it just really your shadow side that is activated rather than you being evil?
oh, absolutely. And I mean, I didn't once I figured that, or once that showed itself to me, I didn't think I was evil. But that's what the fear was that I had all that time that I didn't even recognize until it revealed itself. And then I saw and I forgave it because it was easy. And yes, exactly, there is no evil. And then when we get really down to the end of the road, concepts, bye. Uh, so then I spent the next, what was that? That was 2000, yeah, 2020. I meditated on my own for a year and practiced Kundalini yoga on my own for a year. I really wanted a teacher, so then I eventually found a teacher in Mexico. This brings us to our Mexico part of the story. Um, there's a yoga school there called Hridaya Yoga, the yoga of the heart. And I connected well with that style of yoga and that those teachings. They're basically a combination of non-dual Shaiva Tantra mixed with Advaita as taught by Ramana Maharshi. And I was like, I want to do this. I want to go to school for this. So I did their yoga teacher training. I studied with them and stayed as a karma yogi. I became a Hridaya teacher. And as you say, through all of your guru things, and Sahaj is not trying to be a guru, and he makes that very clear, which I think is great. And communities are difficult. And so I found myself having a lot of those same experiences that you guys mentioned, the difficulties of being in Sangha. Um, and I just worked my steps, which was I understood the truth, and yet I still had all of these beliefs that I would slip into, and I just had to purify them through time and presence. And I've basically been doing that since 2020 with clarity. And at the end of the time at Hridaya, it was just suddenly clear that, like, again, the same struggles that I had had, where it was like, I want to do this, I want to fit in, I want to be part of this thing, but I'm just not able to. People don't seem to like me. Um, like the ones that I get along with are like the weirdos, and I'm like mad. I don't want to always have to be a weirdo. This is the truth of my perception of it. Um, and like I
Concepts,
wasn't,
concepts again. Get
yeah,
rid of those concepts.
yeah, totally. Uh, and the acknowledgement that, like, I'm just still alone all the time, even though I'm in this beautiful, beachside Mexican town, and I'm still just here I am, me with all my problems. And but I was always a body worker. And so what it felt like was that now I had all these teachings that I was looking for all that time, and I understood the concepts of all of these things, and I had some depth of experience through practice, but it wasn't as deep as I felt like it should be based on what I knew was my understanding. Uh, and then TVM, which is the work I do now, came to me. This woman showed up in my town and started teaching this nervous system regulation body work. And I had been a body worker in my past. It was my natural skill has always been touch and somatic information exchange. And so I received a free session from somebody doing the training, and I thought, oh, that was interesting. It was only a half session. I wasn't sure what had changed, but I started looking into it. But it was always too expensive for me to do the training. So I've lived my life very organically since my awakening, where I trust things that are for me come to me. I'll put in the effort in a direction when it feels like the right thing to do, or so I sort of put it out there, and every time I would lean into trying to get into this training, it seemed clear that it was a no. So I just kept with my sort of mainly isolated spiritual practice, showing up in all the ways that it was clear for me to show up. And then that was still another year and a half, and I started receiving TVM when I could, paying sometimes or trading. And eventually, it was clear, like, now my spiritual teachings are sinking deeper because the trauma was like blocking my system from playing, like, the trauma stuck in my body was stabilized in the thought patterns in my mind that kept reproducing themselves. And so when I finally received enough TVM where those blockages were gone, then the understanding of the teachings, which was already there, was able to play itself out through my lived experience. And that got me really excited. So now I really wanted to do the training. And then eventually I got stung by a scorpion. I lived in Mexico 3 years without getting stung by a scorpion. And I really believe in sort of the different, deeper truths of experiences. Scorpion is all about transformation. And so it was like I got the message that like I was going to leave Mexico soon. And then I got stung by this scorpion. And then I got the opportunity to exchange where I was living to host a TVM training. So I got to take the TVM training. And because of my sexual abuse, I talked to the teacher about that, and she had a specialized TVM pelvic floor training that we ended up doing. I became a TVM pelvic floor practitioner as well as teacher, so I can teach people how to do this TVM pelvic floor style of somatic therapy. And then it became very clear that I was going to leave Mexico soon, and I should go home and start this TVM business. Uh, but and then I got kicked out of my school. Not exactly kicked out, but I was selling chocolates, and there was a determination of the school that we weren't going to have teachers distributing medicine. And so that was the only way I was earning an income there. We weren't paid as teachers. So I just was like, well, that's clear. I can't stay here. And then I wanted to investigate Colombia. I had a friend inviting me there. So instead of going straight home and starting this business, I went to Colombia, and in the Sierra Nevada mountains, which are considered like a high spiritual center, especially by the people there, the Kogi people, I did my own. Oh, and I didn't mention this, but also aligned with the school Hridaya are these 10-day silent retreats. So while I was working with the school and studying with the school, I had started taking silent retreats, and my training was actually training me to lead silent retreats. So in the Sierra Nevada mountains, I went into my own 5-day silent retreat. I fasted, I meditated, and I got the very clear message from Spirit that yes, I could keep fucking off, traveling around, enjoying things, but that I actually have a purpose and I need to go home to Seattle and start my TVM business. And so I heard that message and I said, okay. I moved home. That was 3 years ago. I started my business and it's been successful, steadily growing. I feel very fulfilled because I help people and I see the significant changes in their lives. And I'm provided with the time and space for my own continued spiritual development of just practicing resting in awareness and allowing life to move through me and letting go of any thoughts, ideas, concepts, and especially letting go of the idea that I should teach people how to do this.
So basically, you took the path of tough love to get to the point of freeing
Surrender.
yourself from, yeah.
As
Okay.
most of us do, it seems to me.
Well, yeah, nobody said life was going to be a breeze, but
I thought they said that.
yeah, okay.
No, I'm pretty sure that's why I was so mad this whole early part of my life. I'm pretty sure because I was so certain that life shouldn't be like this. I was like so clear. And now the thing is, it's not. It really is actually simple if you just stop trying so hard.
Just allow it to unfold and just be within it, right? Okay.
Yeah.
I mean, that's really, yeah, but the mind kind of gets in the way all the time, doesn't it?
It's mind thing, yeah.
So let's move on to your somatic healing process.
Kinetic therapy.
Lead us through it.
So I'm working with the vagus nerve and with fascia through hands-on touch. And so I can either work with people in person or online. If I'm working with you in person, I'm touching your body using various pressures and various points along the vagus nerve, which comes out of your brain stem, wraps around your throat, goes down the front and back of your body like this, down to your bowels, and it innervates your lungs, your heart, most of your organs, and it controls the slowing down of digestion, and it's also intimately connected with the autonomic nervous system. So, with the right type of touch, either touching yourself or someone touching you, your body will start releasing oxytocin. It's basically a stimulation of the nerves at a certain depth, where if it's stimulated just a little bit, they'll release oxytocin. If it's stimulated too much, they won't release oxytocin. And if it's not stimulated enough, it won't release oxytocin. But you can start feeling the oxytocin release in your body. It feels kind of like sighs in your body, little subtle energetic releasings. And if you just keep maintaining the right amount of pressure, which you'll be able to tell based on the feedback of your fascia, which will start moving a little bit up and down to meet the pressure. When the pressure meets the pushback, the fascial pushback, then it tells your body that or your body tells your brain that it's safe, that this touch is safe because it's not violating its boundary and it's present enough to maintain that pressure with the subtle fluctuations in the fascia. And basically, when you have a lot of oxytocin in your body, you feel safe. When you feel safe, then your body naturally releases trauma. It fires synapses between the brain and the body to places where prior synapses had been shut down or disconnected. And it just does it of its own accord. And then at the same time, I'm just resting in present awareness, which is also the state of love, which is also the state of union. So whoever's on my table, I know their true nature. I am their true nature, and we are just there together, and everything else falls away.
So you can actually feel the presence of the oxytocin that the
As a
person is
relief.
experiencing.
Yeah, totally. And there's also more nuances around like the way that our nervous systems connect, which are like when you consider what non-dual awareness and what non-dual reality really is, that's the understanding of our interconnected nervous systems with all of creation.
Did you ever do any Reiki or quantum touch as
I
well?
Yes, I am certified up to a master level in Reiki. I never practiced it consistently as a modality.
Does it produce a release emotionally and mentally, almost like a psychotherapy session would do?
Sometimes it depends on people's availability to their own emotions. So some people will experience like big emotional releases and others not. But what more consistently it releases is um, these twitches in the body. And so these are physical releases, unwinding of the fascia, so holding patterns as the synapse fires through, then the holding patterns let go. So I'll be witnessing subtle easing of contractions. And then, I mean, really, they can sometimes feel like deep kicks in your deep fascia. There's like this line of fascia that goes from the front of your feet up your legs deep into your pelvic floor, up through the deep front line of your body, all the way to your back of your tongue. And this deep front fascial line stores ancestral trauma. And working with the vagus nerve, I'm working directly with that front fascial line a lot of the time. And then what happens after there's a lot of oxytocin and there's been some releases, then sometimes it will be like a building up of pressure that will show itself in a speeding up of breath, the heart rate, a sympathetic response. And then the sympathetic response will peak and start coming down. This is called the vagal cascade. And as it comes down, then your body will go into neuroplasticity, where it's creating new neuronal pathways. And when this happens, you'll just feel a nice tingling throughout your whole body, and maybe you'll feel very tired. Or that will happen, and then your body will be like, okay, we're ready to do some more. And that will feel just like a more awakening rather than a jello-y experience.
I know you said you do it online, but is there any way that you can give us a small demonstration for Gary and myself?
Yeah, absolutely. And if anyone else is watching this later, they can just kind of go through this process with themselves.
Well, I'm hoping, yes, I'm hoping they'll go along with us for as long as this lasts and get the experience themselves.
Me too. Okay, let's see. So what you want to do is take your predominant hand, whichever one feels the most comfortable, and first tune in with your hand. Allow your awareness to go right into your hand and ask your body if you have consent to do this work. Is it okay if I touch you, me? And you'll notice a response. Maybe the response is a no. In that case, then I would just recommend sitting quietly with yourself and allowing any communication from your body that wants to come through. But if you do get a yes, then you can bring your hand with all of your intention in that hand to your navel and moving very gently, pressure, as though you're feeling the ripeness of a peach. Move it up to where your ribs separate and feel around here between the space where your ribs separate and a little beneath that. You'll find one spot that's a bit softer than all the rest. On some people, it'll be right up next to that ribs. Sometimes it's maybe even 2 inches below. And you wanna, using the pads of your fingers, this part right here, rather than this part right here, gently pulse that space, and very gently, again, as you're just checking the ripeness of a peach. And when you feel this place where there's some pushback, that's where you want to rest. And your state of mind should be open, receptive, and available for anything that wants to come through. If thoughts do come through, do your best not to follow them, just to allow yourself to witness anything that's happening on a sensatory or a mental level. And keeping a curious state of mind. You might notice that your hand's getting pushed out. If that's happening, go ahead and allow your fingers to become more gentle. It might even be that you're barely resting on this place, or even you have to take your hands completely off your flesh and find where there's even an energetic pushback and just rest there. Because what you're doing is letting your body know that you're present and safe. every so often you can feather your touch a little bit, just making sure that you're resting right on the pushback, that you're not reaching the pushback, like forcing yourself in too deep, but also that you're not allowing that pushback to recede without continuing to meet that pressure. And eventually you'll feel kind of a natural sigh or a deregulation. That just happened for me. And sometimes it can be that we're waiting some time, maybe up to 5 minutes. And so that was one release of oxytocin, which I just had. We can mentally tell ourselves, I'm with you, you're safe, I'm right here, or any other internal clear messages that are needed. It might be that we feel like putting our other free hand right on our sternum above our heart, or maybe our lower belly calls us. And we use that same type of pressure, starting very gentle. And another way that I like to perceive what I'm doing is to say imagine is a little overexerting, but it's the word I'm going to use, but it's more subtle than our imagination. It's like a perception of layers of our nervous system. And the fascia pushback is the physical manifestation, but I can even do it with my subtle intention where I'm just like finding the trauma, finding the blockage, and then resting here. So on an intuitive level with the hand, I'm also sinking through the invisible layers of perception to the same place. And so like when I'm working with you guys, not in person, your hands are doing my handwork, but I'm finding the intentional resistance in your nervous system through a subtle awareness. Do you feel complete?
Yes, I mean, when you asked me to ask my hand about permission, the parts of my palm started to pulsate in different spots. I don't know if I was hallucinating, but I actually saw, like in the lower left of my palm, started to pulsate a little bit, and then the upper right side under my index finger started to pulsate. So I assumed that it was giving me permission to proceed.
I'll share from my perspective. So it's interesting. I don't usually work with two people at the same time. So I was navigating that. And I felt like different depths of entry for each of you. And so when I came to you, Stefan, I felt a stiffness, and I felt like a resistance, not to me, but just there in your nervous system. And so I felt myself get nervous. Oh no, what if I'm not doing it right? But I let that go. And then I just did, as I was saying, I went with my invisible hand right onto that resistance right within you and held there and just said, you're safe. And then I saw your body respond. And then you came with your thank you. And so for me, this is the magic of the work. Like, there's no way that just happened in that moment inorganically,
Right. But I'd like to explain that since my solar plexus is my driving essence, the whole fear concept is part of my expression. And because fear is what is being emanated through the solar plexus, it always starts as an intensity or a tensing of that area. I've done breath work to release it because when I do abdominal breath work, I can feel the solar plexus finally trying to resolve itself. But the fear is what creates the tenseness in me. And I'm not ashamed to admit it because uh, I've finally gotten to the point where I accept it and allow it to unfold. And then it shows me a pathway through healing through the fear. So I guess that's what you felt when you felt that stiffness at the beginning.
That makes sense to me. And if you want to work together, let me know.
Sure, that'd be great. Now I
Excellent.
want to hear. Now I want to hear about Gary.
Gary felt very available. I didn't feel any resistance with you, Gary. I feel there is like a depth that we could go to that feels like your sacral energy. Uh, but it would have taken longer, more presence to for that to open whatever is going on there.
Well, let's do that. We'll set up a session. We'll because I want to explore this more. So we'll do that. We'll set up a session or whatever. So let's explore this a little more. Yeah, I felt no resistance. I felt like, wow, this is great. So yeah, I want to look at. So personally, I want to look into this and see, just what's what with it, and how it, and how it relates to my general shtick.
Definitely. Yeah, I mean, we did that healing session, you and I, Gary, where you helped with my neck, and
Right.
my neck has been greatly improved since that.
There you go.
Yeah,
So it's all a matter, once again, we come back to the basic principle, at least the basic principle that I operate under, which is whatever works. Hey, there's a million modalities and teachings and spiritual paths and blah, blah, blah out there. You got to find out, you got to get your own groove, what works. Now, I think just that with that, just initial little sampling there. So, I think this is great. I want to look into it. And anybody, and we're going to put a link or whatever. People watching this stuff, maybe they went through the process, maybe they felt something or that resonated or attracted to them to it. They can get in touch with you. But I'm definitely saying sign me up because I want to go a little deeper into this.
also, there's a freebie on my website. It's a guided meditation that's integrated with some epsilon brainwave state binaural beats. The epsilon brainwave state is, as Gary knows, is the lowest brainwave state, and it's where your subconscious resides, which is a lot
And
of
I
people
use
say your subconscious is your body.
And I use that program. So yeah, there's a lot of stuff here that we can explore, and I think we're going to because our relationship, your relationship, mine, is just beginning to really unfold and flower, and we're rocking and rolling. That's great. As long as you're open and willing and ready to explore and rock and roll, there's so much available. There's so
Oh,
much available.
one thing I want to
So
say, so that process which we just went through, ideally, if you're doing it from home, give yourself some time because it sometimes takes our bodies some time to get safe, and especially when we're doing it completely alone rather than with someone co-regulating with us, it can take even longer because a big part of me being present with the work is the co-regulation, but you can get to a lot of the traumas on your own with that understanding of the intention by which you're touching yourself, the presence with which you're touching yourself, to some level, the trust that what you intuitively know is accurate and not chasing stories or arguments in your head around it and just allowing what's there to be there with no agenda of something needing to change, but just the availability to meet everything. And it's from this place that maybe emotions will come up and move, or what is common is you'll feel each time those sighs happen, just rest with it. And then eventually you might start feeling kind of like little twitches and jerks in different parts of your body. These are the releases. And at some point, then your body will be done. It will be clear. And then you just say thank you. I also like to create normally like a healing space. I'll start and I'll just call upon the Buddhas of the 10 directions to create a safe and healing space for us, keep out all presences that are disharmonious to our work, and call in all healing presences who are available, willing, and ready to aid in my healing, your healing, whoever's healing for the highest benefit of themselves and all sentient beings. And then from that place, I'll work. It also gives the container where any available positive presences that can help us in any way on any dimension now can do that.
So again, you can feel all of these things when you're working on somebody, and when the release comes, what should they expect?
So this is always so interesting, right? Because we all interpret reality through our own internal lens. And mine has been about simplifying and conceptualizing. So mostly what I experience, because I try not to put stories onto anything that I'm experiencing, it'll be like what I said with you. I'll just feel a resistance, let's say, or a firmness, or like a different texture of this subtle layers that I'm intentioning through. And when I find something which feels different from the rest of it, I'll just rest there and I'll intuitively intend whatever needs to be intended. Sometimes it will be you're safe. Sometimes it will be like, I love you so much. Sometimes it's I see you. Sometimes it's I believe you. But it's very simple. And through the presence with that intention, and I try and not even make it words, and I'm doing better and better as time goes, it'll be like, oop, and then the frequency of this layer, let's say, will integrate with the other frequencies, and then maybe I'll go deeper. Or it'll stay just right there, and then it'll go like, blue, and then everything will go completely soft. This is like the subtle version. If I'm in person with you and I'm on your body, it'll be, I'll have my hand on your body and I'll be moving with it. I'll be staying present as I can to the sensations in my hand. And I'll be also at the same time doing this more subtle thing as well. And with the fascia and the body, sometimes as I'm on that thing and something's needed, but I don't know what it is, the body will start tensing and breathing faster. And this is a sympathetic response. So the nervous system will start switching between sympathetic and parasympathetic. Sometimes it will rev up in sympathetic a little bit and then, disconnect, go back into like a disassociative parasympathetic, or the person will come into control. And so they'll notice or they won't notice, but as their breathing revs up, we've been conditioned to not express and feel our emotions. And how that looks is we start slowing our breathing down, controlling it. You probably recognize this from meditation. Think of when you first started meditating and you're like, but when you're really in meditation, the breathing is just completely spontaneous. You have no control. Sometimes it quickens and it slows down and maybe it catches. And this is just your nervous system working itself out. And so I'll be with your body as it works itself out through the intention of healing, safety, love. And I mean that all expansive love. And then sometimes the breathing is picking up, the heartbeat is ramping up, and and then a sigh will come or an emotion will be felt. Often I'll see whatever it is get caught in the throat right here. And so then I'll guide you to take a breath and I'll guide you to vocalize sigh with vocalization. This is where if you are able to get in touch with your emotions, often an emotional release will come here because there's these connections between our vocal cords, our diaphragm, and our pelvic floor. And these kind of, as you, it vibrates all of those and it creates a sympathetic frequency, which just allows things to move all the way through. And it just depends. Sometimes I'll feel these like trembles, like almost, my teacher says volcanoes, or earthquakes, but it's just very subtle. And then it
Pulsations.
will, yeah, subtle pulsations or waves, just different things. And this is the message is moving through your fascia. And I just stay there. And sometimes it'll, as we were saying while we were doing this work, sometimes the fascia will start pushing me out, which is basically your body. Am I really safe? Is this awareness really here with me? Because if I stay firm like that and it's pushing me out, I mean, there's different things. It's a lot intuitive. Sometimes I need to stay firm, but not too firm. And just like, I'm here with you. I'm here with you. You're safe. I'm here with you. And then it will let me in deeper. Or sometimes what it wants is me to like ease up, and I'll ease up, and then it will let me in deeper, slower though, not usually like a forcing. Um, it depends on the client. Like if someone is very controlling in their reality, we call it addiction protocol, and I'll need to use more stimulation to get the oxytocin release than I would need to use on a very sensitive person who doesn't have this sense of controlling their environment all the time. Um,
Well, that's a lot of information to unpack right now. And I think we've kind of just actually touched the surface at the moment. When Gary does a session with you, we'd love to have you back. I want to thank you very much for being here. This was a wonderful session, and we'll do it again.
that sounds
Okay?
wonderful. Thank you. Yeah, thanks,
Okay.
Stephanie.